Kyle Crabbs, Brentley Weissman, the Draft Network, and we are here to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. John Gruden's Raiders, Brentley, they were super aggressive in the offseason to go out and try and upgrade this defense. Spend some good money on the linebacker core, specifically trying to overhaul that group. And in addition to their free agent signings, they also traded for Raekwon McMillan at the beginning of the season as well. So lots of new blood there for a unit that hasn't really seen it materialize yet. So over the course of the past week or so, you've looked at the Raiders defensively. And what stood out to you as far as the investments that the Raiders have made and where it's going right / going wrong?
Yeah, no, I think, first off, credit to John Gruden and Mike Mayock, the GM and the head coach, for identifying linebacker as an area of improvement. They needed to get better at the second level. It was clear as day. I think if they could go back to I think it was 2019 draft, they probably would have wanted to select Devin White there instead of Cleveland Farrell. But, the past is the past, and you had to, accept that and try to address the position. That being said, they went out and signed Corey Littleton, who came over from the Rams, to a pretty big deal, man. 3 years, $35 million overall contract, $18 million guaranteed, I believe it was. And, they wanted him to come in and be a day one impact kind of player. And so far, it has not been the case, man. And listen, I liked Corey Littleton at the Rams. He is an energetic player. He has sideline-to-sideline speed, a playmaker. He can do it all, really. He can blitz the quarterback. He's instinctual. He can play the run game. But what he did in pass coverage with the Rams is sensational. That has been the opposite with the Raiders, and I wasn't necessarily sure why. I mean, he's been an absolute liability. And listen, again, I was a fan of him at the Rams, but he is missing tackles with the Raiders. He's been out of spots in coverage. But the thing that's been glaring for me is just his lack of physicality, his lack of just competitiveness when it comes to taking on and shedding blocks. It's alarming. And, listen, there's still half a season to go, and he can still turn it around. But so far, right now, I mean, the Raiders have to be regretting, giving Littleton that contract, which is really unfortunate because he's the exact kind of player they needed for that defense to take the next step. The other player they signed and brought in from free agency is Nick Kwiatkowski. I want to say his name is Kwiatkowski from the Chicago Bears. And he, was a little more of the under the radar kind of signing, but he has been by far and away the superior player between the two of him and Littleton. He isn't going to blow you away when watching him, but he's just steady. He's been really good in coverage, which is surprising for a guy who, isn't necessarily the best athlete in the world, but is smart, he's instinctual, and he's a tough football player. And yes, he's missing times with injuries in early on in this season, but when he's been healthy, he's been a difference maker for the Raiders. And so, I think as the second half of the season progresses, they need those two guys, one to be on the field and two for Littleton to really step up, if they're going to really try to make this wild card.
So let me ask you this, because you think about the presence in Los Angeles and how good he was, and now what he's showcasing in Las Vegas. And obviously there's a really big difference in the dynamic of those two front sevens in the presence of 99 in Los Angeles, right?
No doubt.
So from what you had seen of Corey Littleton in Los Angeles and his usage and his role and the luxuries that were maybe afforded to him and other players in the front seven because of Aaron Donald versus not having interior defensive line play of that caliber. And you had mentioned the effectiveness taking on and challenging blocks. Was that a layer of his game that you think was kind of hidden in Los Angeles because there were less offensive linemen getting up onto that B level of the defenses frequently?
I think that's a really good point. And, that's something that, to be honest, I haven't even thought of realistically. And I think that could be exactly what's going on. And maybe that's kind of always been Corey Littleton's game, and it was just kind of masked because we didn't see a lot of the interior offensive line and making it to the second level with the Rams because they were occupied with Aaron Donald. That could be it. I also think a major factor is Corey Littleton went from playing under Wade Phillips, who's arguably one of the best defensive corners of all time, to Paul Gunther, who most expect isn't going to last the season, with the Raiders. And so I think that has a little bit, into it as well. But I also just think, man, it's an effort thing. I swear, I watched the tape. I think it's an effort thing with Corey Littleton. I think it's a want to. And, this is crazy to say. For the Raiders, that could be a good thing because that means potentially he could turn it around. I'd rather have that be the case than flat out being say, oh shit, oh shoot, did we just mess up like in our evaluation? Like
Right.
are we not? Does he just not have it?
Right.
And so because then you really can't even say, oh, he can turn it around because he just doesn't have it. So it's tough. It's a tough deal there, and I do think for the Raiders to really try to make this wild card, they need better play out of him.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting balance between Littleton as a space defender. He's under 230 pounds. Raekwon McMillan there as a dude who's been a hammer against the run downhill. Do you start to see a little bit more rotation between those players? And then you get into the value of the contract that you signed Corey Littleton to. You didn't sign him to what you signed him to be a rotational linebacker. You
No.
signed him to be a 3-down linebacker. So if it is a motivational thing for them, as you said, at least then you can start pushing buttons and hoping to find the right one that's going to get it to click. But sometimes these guys, that they get that nice second contract, and some of the urgency in their approach drops off. And we don't want to say for sure that's what's happening with Corey Littleton, but at the same time, if we're seeing a lack of urgency in his play, then we need to dig deeper, and the Raiders have to be asking themselves why that's the case.